Hello, my name is Zachariah Van Sliders. You've decided to tune into another horrible game review. Before we get into it, let's get into a few disclaimers. Number one, the word horrible in this review does not necessarily refer to the game. It refers to the quality of the review, as I am a house dad who does this with every free time he has, but only has a certain amount of resources available to him. Disclaimer number two, I do not believe video games are scoreable, so you will not have a scored review here. Instead, you will get an overview of what the game is about, the pros and the cons, from my opinion, as all reviews are, and then whether or not I will be sticking with the review outside the purposes of the review itself. Disclaimer number three, I do not get to do everything in these games. I only get a few hours with them. With that being said, I've only gotten so many hours. This is a snap review of what I think of it from my initial first impressions. And with that, we get into the review. Today, I am reviewing Red Dead Redemption 2's online component, Red Dead Online. So, a couple of things you need to know. If you look back on my channel a very, very long time ago when I had started and was trying to do the narrative game thing, I actually have a lot of Red Dead episodes. I played through all of the Red Dead storyline. And so before we get into the Red Dead Online part, I do want to say the Red Dead story part of the game is one of the most influential and greatest games ever made. Is it overcomplicated? Yes. Control scheme is not the greatest. Does it take forever to get to places? Yes, that's what they were going for. But still, that game is emotionally impactful. It's full of stuff to do. And while it does give you a solitary, lonely feeling, it also constantly throws things at you. Why am I talking about this? Because I never got to review it, because this was back in the narrative phase of this channel. So just want to let that you know that this is in Games Pass and is absolutely worth playing the story of this game. It also sets up context for what I'm about to review, which is specifically the Red Dead Online component. Now, truth be told, back when Red Dead Online first came out, I played it. And it was lackluster. One thing that bothered me is that there was almost nothing to do. The way they approached story missions and the way they approached the world building was a little bit want, in my opinion. But now that the game is in Games Pass, I really wanted to give it a second chance, especially the Red Dead Online part. And I figured that I would do it for a review for all of you nice people out there. And then you get to hear my initial thoughts on Red Dead, and you'd also get to hear my thoughts on Red Dead Online. So, what is Red Dead Online? Well, unlike the story in which you play one very specific character, you create a character right off the bat, a character just getting out of prison, sent out into a post the whole Dutch Vanderbilt storyline world to kind of build your own legend, your own West stuff. Now, there's a lot of stuff that work very differently in this, however, from the original game. Instead of collecting weapons or finding weapons or purchasing weapons, you have to rank up your character before you're even able to purchase these weapons, while they do have an actual currency amount. Now, in addition to that, the missions that you can get, you can either do stranger missions, you can do story missions, or now you can do what's called these role missions, which we'll get into those in a second. One thing I want to say straight up. When I went back to this, I did not have time to do the stranger missions or the story missions because I wanted to focus on the roles. That's what was new. I don't particularly think they changed anything about the original story missions or the original stranger missions, but the way they used to work back when I played this the first time is for the story missions, you would take a mission, you would wait to match make up with 3 other people. You couldn't do them alone. The 3 of you would go through a mission, gunfighting and doing whatever you had to. And then at the end, you would be approached with a moral decision that you all had to vote on. The vote then decided the end of the story, as well as affected your overall good or badness of a character, which is really annoying. And I hope it's not like that anymore, but I believe it is, which is why I tried to focus on things I hadn't done before in this game. Kind of like that, the stranger missions also have this weird multiplayer component where you have to do the mission and NPCs don't spawn, but instead other player characters can get involved and try and take you out on behalf of the negative side of whatever you're doing. which I find super irritating, but we'll get into that in a second. So what are the roles? The roles are you spend gold, which is an in-game currency. I don't know if they give it to you right away, but I had 30 when I went in. I don't know if that was from previous playing or just like a sign-on bonus or whatever, which allowed me to buy the opening kit or whatever for each of the roles. The roles are bounty hunter, trader, collector. Bounty hunter, obvious. You go in, you go to any sort of sheriff's stop, find a wanted poster. You go to a location, you wait for the target to arrive, then you decide whether to take the target alive or dead. You shoot up all his bad guys, and then you take the body into the cops or him into the cops. This is very much like the same bounty hunting mechanic in the actual game itself. The trader is a bit different. You work for Crips, your camp guy, and he basically sends you out to get supplies. And once you get these supplies in, you turn your base into a shop, allowing you to deliver supplies to people, get paid for it, and then, of course, go out and collect supplies like doing hunting and fishing and bringing it back to him to create more supplies to then do a mission to take it out and sell it to towns and whatnot. Finally, the collector, you work for this weird gypsy lady. She basically gives you a collector's pouch. It's a special pouch that tells you what you can collect, and it's anything from like jewelry to arrowheads to artifacts to flowers. And basically, she tells you that there's supposedly world context, NPC context that you can, come to hear or understand, in which that will allow you to know where these things are, and you go out and collect them. So those are the roles that are really option. There's a moonshiner option as well, but you have to hit a trader level 5 before you can do that. It sounds really cool. You can buy property. I was not able to get my trader to level 5 on this, so I wasn't able to get there. Why I wasn't able to get anybody to level 5, we'll talk about in depth in the cons. Now, in addition to all this, basically how it works is you have a camp similar in name to the camp that you are in the main storyline, in which you're with this one old dude named Crips. He moves the camp around every time you load in. It's kind of like your base of operations. As well as if you friend up with anybody, you can form posses, and the posses can use your camp as well. It kind of becomes like a group camp. You can then spend spend game currency, like just normal money that you get, to purchase things to make the camp nicer, bigger tents, bigger amenities, that sort of thing. And then, of course, there's a slew of customizable options. So that's basically it. That's what the game is. So I'm going to get into the pros and cons, because I think you guys all kind of know what Red Dead is at this point. I don't think we need to spend any more time on that. So the pros. The pros are you still definitely have that feel of immersion. The riding from one point to another is almost meditative. It's nice. You can collect horses and guns and stuff. And even though they lock it behind these ranks, which we'll talk about in the cons, it's still a lot of fun to collect that stuff. It's also a lot of fun to have a character that you created. That was my favorite part, was creating my own character and making him look the way I wanted him to look, and then taking him out into situations. It felt kind of like a freedom that you don't really get from the original story. My next pro would be the gunfighting is still on par. It's one of the most visceral and really well done experiences in gaming, I think. From the story to here, it just translates over perfectly. The guns, every gun has a satisfying cock and fire noise. Everything has kind of like a weight to it in the actual gunplay, and just like the tactical decisions, the way the enemies go down and get shot. It's really good, really well done on that level. That out of the way, we're going to go to cons. I know there wasn't a lot of pros, and I got to say, my experience with this game is a little bit less than positive, so I'm probably going to get some hate from you guys out there. But my biggest problem with this game is the number one con with a bullet is the experience that you get from the Red Dead story is not here. And I don't think anybody expected all the story or side missions to be here. But one thing that the Red Dead story does for people is it's just constantly throwing stuff at you. And I'm not talking about the side quests. You will just be riding down the road. You'll see a woman with a broken wagon. It turns out that it's a bandit ambush. Or you'll see a guy who just comes out and needs you to help him take shackles off because he escaped from a chain gang. Wolves will attack you or bandits will attack you. This world feels empty and devoid. So, like, while the story game gives you this lonely solidarity feel while still giving you interesting things to have that are happening around you, this game, the online version doesn't. I don't know why all that stuff was taken out. I don't know if it was too hard to do online or whatever, or they were expecting more from the player, like in-player role-playing. But that was a real problem for me. Like, riding from one place to another is one of the most boring things in the online. It's one of the greatest things about the normal story. It's one of the most boring things about the online part. You'll see an NPC every once in a while. He won't react to you more than saying hi. There's never a bandit attacking you. There's no wolves or animals attacking you. Nothing. The only time you might get into like every once in a while you might ride onto a snake or something, or you might stumble into these places that are just like bandit camps where you can like take them out and get their treasure or whatever. But for the most part, the world is very empty and feels very devoid of anything, of any life. And that's a real problem for me, because as lonely as you felt in the normal game, everything felt alive. Everything felt vivacious. And this game just does not, the online component just does not do that. So with that in mind, there's no fast travel. So anybody out there, I'm going to tell you right now, anybody out there who has very little time to play video games, who has a few hours when the wife and the kid go to bed, or when the kid is taking a nap, or whatever, this is just not the game for you. It will never be the game for you, because you can't get anywhere in that time. One session I spent just literally riding from point A to point B, and nothing happened. Absolutely nothing happened. And that really irritates. As far as the roles go, the bounty hunting is a lot of fun and probably the most interesting. The problem with it is, though, it's very simple and straightforward. You go do basically the exact same thing over and over and over again. So after like 4 or 5, you've been there and you've done that, and there's nothing really special to it. The trader thing is kind of the same thing, almost even boringer, because really you're just going out and killing animals and bringing skins back. And then there's the delivery missions, which can get a little hairy, but they're far and few in between. And then as far as the collector goes, because there's no NPCs anywhere, there's no real context information that I can gather, it's just random happenstance when you find one of these things to add to your collection. So there's no real strategy to it, so you can't focus on it. And while the idea behind this seems to be role play as your favorite role in the West, it doesn't come across that way. It just comes across as like side achievements you can do for your normal character, which is irritating. My next con is a con that has been there since the beginning, and just they haven't done anything with it, and it bothers me. The coolest thing about the main story game is you have this bandit camp that you live in, but that camp always has stuff going on. There's NPCs there playing dominoes or poker or wanting to go fishing with you or something like that. And don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting that level of immersion from the internet side of it, but just one cranky old guy who I don't even like out there in the camp makes me never want to return to the camp. So I only ever return to it when I have to, and that's irritating to me, especially when they added a dog that I can't even take. I could buy this dog. He just sits next to my bed. That's all he does. I can't do anything with him. Rockstar's online stuff is notorious for starting slow and building it up and making it better. And they've obviously added stuff to this. So is it going to get better? Probably. But for right now, it's not. It takes everything out of the story that was fun and leaves all the stuff that isn't fun. And that is irritating to me. It also relies way, way, way too much on player v player content or interactions. I know it's an online and I know everybody's in there, but I don't want to rely on other players because other players are often idiots that I don't want to deal with. The one time I met up with players, I was just in a town visiting a butcher to sell my carcasses from hunting, and he just ran up and shot me in the back of the head. That's not fun. It's not fun for me. I don't know how that could be really fun for him, but I don't want any part of that. And while that was way worse the last time I played, in which cities were just basically troll hunts, it's irritating. It's irritating to see the player mark on my map and just immediately know that he's probably just going to shoot at me for no reason just because he's bored. So that brings me to whether or not I'm going to stick with this. I've been talking a little bit longer than I want to. I'm sorry this went a little bit late, but I'm probably not going to stick with it. I don't have time for this game. I know that's a little bit of a cold response, and I apologize for that. It sounds a little bit overtly negative. I don't necessarily think it's poorly made. I just think there's not enough incentive to make me jump in and keep playing it from what they're doing. And I hope they add more, and I hope they add more interesting things that would bring me in, that would make me want to spend my time in there. But right now they don't. And because of that, I'm going to spend my time somewhere else. So I'm sure everybody out there hates this review. You guys usually do. So please tell me how terrible it was in the comments below. And you can always contact us on Facebook at OldManGamingDH, on Twitter at OldManGaming9. Of course, join our Discord. Tell me how horrible I am there. The link is in the description below. And then, as usual, as long as you guys keep watching and listening to these things, I'll keep making them. See you guys next week.